"I can't hold it in anymore," the rancher said to the virgin giant mail-order bride. "She hesitated that night and everything changed. I can't hold it in anymore. Maggie, I'm in love with you." The rancher's voice cracked like thunder as he crushed the shivering virgin giant mail-order bride against his chest, her soaking wet dress clinging to every curve, his hands sliding into her hair with a desperation that made her gasp. Garrett Hayes, the broken, lonely rancher who'd been sleeping in a freezing barn for 4 torturous months while she slept alone in his bed, finally surrendered to the truth, burning through his veins. This 6'1" virgin giant mail-order bride, with her impossible strength and sage-green eyes, had destroyed every wall he'd built around his shattered heart. But the moment those words left his lips, Magnolia Brennan did the one thing he never expected. She hesitated. The fire crackled beside them, throwing dancing shadows across the rough wooden walls of the ranch house. Outside, the Montana wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling the windows, dumping snow in thick curtains that erased the world beyond their door. But inside, everything had gone deathly still. Garrett's heart hammered so hard against his ribs he thought it might break through. His hands were still tangled in Maggie's wet hair, her face just inches from his, and he could feel her trembling, but he didn't know if it was from the cold anymore or from his words hanging between them like a loaded gun. "No," she whispered, and the word hit him like a fist to the gut. "No, Garrett, you don't mean that." He saw tears streaming down her cheeks, cutting clean tracks through the dirt smudged on her face from the fence line. Her lips were still blue from the cold, her whole body shaking, but she was pulling away from him, trying to create distance where there should be none. "The hell I don't," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. His hands tightened in her hair, not rough but firm, keeping her close. "Maggie, look at me." She squeezed her eyes shut instead. "Look at me," he said again, softer this time. And when she finally opened those sage-green eyes, he saw something in them that broke him clean in half. Fear, raw, deep, bone-crushing fear that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "You're grieving," she said, her voice shaking. "You're lonely. You haven't been with anyone since your wife died. And I'm just here and convenient and—" "Stop!" The word came out sharp as a whip crack. Garrett released her hair but caught her face instead, his calloused palms cupping her cheeks, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Don't you dare put words in my mouth. Don't you dare tell me what I feel, but look at me." Her voice broke, and suddenly she was standing, the blankets falling away, her full height on display even in her wet, clinging dress. Even barefoot, even shaking, she towered. "Really, look, Garrett! I'm not some delicate flower you can show off in town." People stare. They whisper. "Your own brother thinks you settled for the freak who couldn't find a husband back east." Something dangerous flickered in Garrett's eyes. He stood slowly, deliberately, until he was looking up at her, because even at his full height, she had 2 inches on him, and there was nothing but pure, burning intensity in his gaze. "You're right," he said quietly. "People do stare. They stared at the train depot when you stepped off, and I saw you for the first time. They stared in church when we got married. They stare every time we go into town." He stepped closer, backing her up until her shoulders hit the wall beside the fireplace. "You want to know what I see when they stare?" She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His body was so close to hers now, radiating heat that had nothing to do with the fire. "I see their jealousy," Garrett said, his voice dropping to something rough and intimate. "I see every man in that town wishing they had the guts to love a woman who could break them in half if she wanted to. I see every woman wondering what it's like to be strong enough to carry your own weight, and everyone else's too." His hand came up, his thumb brushing along her jaw. "And my brother? Cole's an idiot who wouldn't know a good thing if it kicked him in the teeth. But I do, Maggie. I know exactly what I have. You have a mail-order bride who can't even—" her voice cracked, "who's never even been with a man, who doesn't know how to be a real wife. You're my wife in every way that matters." His other hand found her waist, his fingers spreading across the small of her back. "You cook my meals. You mend my clothes. You work this ranch beside me like you were born to it." You sit with me on the hard nights when I can't stop thinking about Sarah and the son I never got to meet. And you don't try to fix it, you just sit there. And that's everything, but I'm not—" She couldn't finish. The words were too painful. "Not what?" He leaned in closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Not in my bed. Is that what this is about?" The heat in her cheeks had nothing to do with the fire now. She nodded barely. "Maggie." Her name came out like a prayer and a curse all at once. "The only reason you're not in my bed is because I've been too much of a coward to ask. I've been sleeping in that freezing barn for 4 months, lying awake every night, wanting you so badly it physically hurts, because I was terrified of this exact moment." "Of what?" "Of telling you I love you and watching you realize you don't feel the same." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Of finally having something good again and losing it because I'm too broken to deserve it." Her breath caught. "You think I don't feel the same?" "I don't know what you feel, Maggie." You hesitated. You pulled away. "So tell me." His eyes searched hers desperately. "Tell me right now if I'm alone in this, because if I am, I'll never mention it again. I'll sleep in the barn. We'll keep the arrangement. I'll be your husband on paper and nothing more, and I'll find a way to live with that even if it kills me." The wind rattled the windows again. A log in the fire shifted, sending up a shower of sparks. And in that moment, with his hands on her and his heart laid bare, and his broken, beautiful eyes begging her to be brave enough for both of them, Magnolia Brennan made a choice. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. It wasn't graceful. She'd never kissed anyone before, didn't know about angles or timing or any of it, but none of that mattered, because the second her lips touched his, Garrett made a sound low in his throat, like something in him had finally broken free. His arms went around her, pulling her against him with enough force to steal her breath. And when he kissed her back, it was like the world had been waiting for this exact moment. His hands were in her hair again, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and she gasped against his mouth, because nothing had ever felt like this desperate, consuming need that made her knees weak and her heart race, and every nerve ending in her body light up like the 4th of July. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, and his eyes were dark with something that made her stomach flip. "Maggie," he said roughly, "I need you to tell me. Right now? Do you want this?" "Yes." The word came out barely a whisper. "Yes, I want—" She couldn't finish, because he was kissing her again, harder this time, walking her backward toward the bedroom door. "Tell me to stop," he said against her lips between kisses. "Anytime. You tell me to stop and I will. Don't stop." Her hands fisted in his shirt. "Please don't stop." They stumbled through the bedroom doorway, and Garrett kicked the door shut behind them. The room was cold, no fire in here, but that didn't matter because his hands were everywhere, sliding down her sides, finding the laces of her wet dress. And when his fingers brushed bare skin, she made a sound she didn't recognize. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her neck. And she wanted to argue, but he was kissing down her throat, his beard rough against her sensitive skin, and thought became impossible. The dress fell away. The wet layers beneath it followed. And when she stood before him, in nothing but the firelight spilling through the doorway, she waited for him to change his mind. Instead, he looked at her like she was something sacred. Garrett's hands were reverent as they traced her shoulders, her arms, the curve of her waist. Every touch made her shiver, but not from cold anymore. His eyes stayed locked on hers, dark and intense. And when he pulled his own shirt over his head, she saw the scars, physical marks of a hard life, just like the emotional ones he carried inside. "I've never—" she started, but he stopped her with a kiss. "I know. We'll go slow." His voice was rough velvet. "I promise." And he kept that promise. Every movement was careful, deliberate, giving her time to adjust, to breathe, to feel. When he finally made her his wife in every sense of the word, it wasn't rushed or clumsy. It was tender and overwhelming, and everything she'd never dared to hope for. He whispered her name like a prayer, his forehead pressed against hers. And when the initial pain faded into something else entirely, She understood why people wrote poetry about this. Afterward, they lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like him, leather and wood smoke and Montana earth. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, and for the first time in her entire life, Magnolia Brennan felt small in the best possible way. Not diminished, but cherished, protected, loved. I meant it, Garrett said quietly, his lips against her hair. Every word. I love you, Maggie Hayes. She turned in his arms to face him. I love you too. I have for weeks. I was too scared to believe it could be real. It's real. He kissed her forehead. You're my wife. My partner. My everything. She fell asleep with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Wrapped in warmth and safety she'd never known existed. But dawn came too soon. The pounding on the door shattered their peace like a gunshot. Garrett jerked awake, instantly alert, his arm tightening protectively around Maggie. More pounding, harder this time, accompanied by voices, rough, demanding voices that made ice settle in her stomach. Stay here, Garrett ordered, already pulling on his pants. But Maggie knew those voices. She'd heard them in her nightmares for months. Her stepfather had found her. She grabbed Garrett's arm as he reached for the door. Don't open it, please. If he sees me... Too late. Garrett had already turned the handle. 3 men stood on the porch, their breath fogging in the frozen morning air. The one in front wore an expensive suit that looked obscene in the rough Montana landscape. Vernon Pike, with his weasel face and cold eyes that made Maggie's skin crawl. Behind him stood 2 hired guns, hands resting casually on their holsters. Well, well, Vernon said, his smile showing too many teeth. There's my stepdaughter. Magnolia, darling, you've been very difficult to find. Garrett stepped fully into the doorway, blocking Vernon's view. You're on my property. State your business or leave. Vernon's smile never wavered. My business is with the girl. She stole $500 from me before she ran off, and I'm here to collect. That's a lie. Maggie's voice came from behind Garrett, and she appeared beside him, hastily dressed, but her hair still loose from sleep. That money was my mother's. From selling her grandmother's ring. You had no right to it. Your mother was my wife. What was hers was mine. Vernon's eyes traveled over Maggie with obvious disdain. Though I see you found yourself a husband desperate enough to take you. Tell me, Rancher, did she mention her debts before you married the Amazon? Garrett's fist clenched, but his voice stayed deadly calm. My wife doesn't owe you anything. Get off my land. Can't do that. Vernon pulled a piece of paper from his coat. This here's a promissory note, signed by Magnolia herself, agreeing to repay money borrowed for her passage west. $500 plus interest. That's $600 total now. I never signed anything. Maggie stepped forward, but Garrett's arm shot out, keeping her behind him. Don't care if it's real or forged, Garrett said flatly. She's not going anywhere with you, and I'm not paying a cent. Vernon's smile finally faded. Then I'll see you in court, and when the judge sees this note, he'll order her returned to Pennsylvania to work off the debt. You know what kind of work that means for a woman with no skills and no family, don't you, Rancher? He let the implication hang in the air like poison. Brothels always need tall girls. Makes them exotic. Garrett moved so fast, Vernon didn't see it coming. On second, he was standing on the porch. The next Garrett had him by the throat, slammed against the wall. The 2 hired guns drawing their weapons, but not firing because their boss was in the way. Say one more word about my wife, Garrett growled, his face inches from Vernon's, and they'll be digging your grave before lunch. Garrett, don't! Maggie grabbed his arm. He's not worth it. Vernon wheezed, his face turning red, but his eyes glittered with triumph. Assault witness. You just made this easier. Garrett released him with a shove of disgust. Vernon straightened his suit, coughing, that terrible smile back in place. $600, he repeated. You have until Friday. That's 3 days. Bring the money to the hotel in town, or I file charges and take what's mine. His eyes slid to Maggie. One way or another, I always collect my debts. They rode off, leaving hoofprints in the fresh snow, and a silence so heavy it felt like suffocation. Inside, Maggie sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. He forged that note. I never borrowed anything. But Garrett, you don't have $600. After the summer losses, after the cattle prices dropped, I'll figure something out. There's nothing to figure out." Her voice cracked. "The bank won't extend more credit. We can't sell cattle until spring. And even if we could, we'd lose the ranch trying to pay him off." She looked up at him with devastated eyes. "I have to go back." "No." The word was absolute. "Just for a season. I'll work, pay him off. Maggie, listen to yourself." Garrett knelt in front of her, gripping her hands. "Men like Vernon don't let go. You won't be working in some shop or kitchen. You know exactly what he'll do. You'll disappear into some brothel and I'll never see you again. Then what else can we do?" Tears streamed down her face. "I won't let him take your ranch. I won't let him destroy everything you've built because of me." "Because of you?" He cupped her face. "Maggie, you are everything I've built. This ranch means nothing without you in it. We have 3 days, she whispered. 3 days to find $600 we don't have, or I lose you forever." Garrett rode into town like a man possessed, leaving Maggie at the ranch, despite her protests. He went to the bank first, denied. Then to neighboring ranches, sympathetic. But nobody had that kind of cash in winter. He even went to the saloon, asking about high-stakes poker games. But 3 days wasn't enough time to win that kind of money, and losing would make everything worse. By the second day, desperation clawed at his throat. He was running out of options and time. That's when his brother Cole arrived from Denver, early for his planned visit. Garrett explained everything: the confession, the consummation, Vernon's arrival, the impossible debt. Cole listened, then said 5 words that changed everything. "Let me see the note." Vernon, overconfident, actually showed it to them at the hotel. Cole studied it for exactly 12 seconds before his lawyer's mind caught what Vernon had missed. The promissory note was dated 2 weeks after Maggie had already left Pennsylvania. It was legally impossible for her to have signed it. "This is fraud," Cole said simply, "and attempted extortion. I'm a lawyer, and these 2 witnesses," he gestured to the hotel owner and clerk, "just heard you try to collect on a forged document." Vernon's face went purple. "You can't prove—" "The postmark on her train ticket proves she left before this date. Garrett has it at home. We can have the sheriff here in 5 minutes." Cole smiled coldly. "Or you can leave Montana today and never come back. Your choice." Vernon chose survival. Within an hour, he and his hired guns were gone. Riding east with their tails between their legs, Garrett returned to the ranch to find Maggie pacing the floor, terrified he'd done something desperate to get the money. When he told her Vernon was gone, that the debt was fake, that she was free, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing with relief so intense it shook her whole body. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "You're safe. You're mine. And nothing's ever taking you from me again." That spring, Maggie's belly started to swell with new life. Garrett would rest his hand there each night, marveling at the miracle growing inside the woman who'd saved him from his loneliness. They worked the ranch together, her strength and his determination making them unstoppable. When the twins came, 2 daughters with their mother's height and their father's stubborn spirit, Garrett held them both and wept. Not from grief this time, but from joy so complete it hurt. He'd lost a wife and son once. The pain had nearly destroyed him, but life had given him something he never expected, a second chance with a woman brave enough to love his broken pieces, strong enough to carry both their weights, and stubborn enough to believe she deserved happiness, even when the world told her she didn't. That night, 5 years after he'd confessed he couldn't hold it in anymore, Garrett watched Maggie rock their daughters to sleep, her humming filling the house they'd built together. And he understood something profound. Sometimes the best things in life come in packages the world doesn't expect. Sometimes the greatest love stories start with the bravest words. And sometimes the person you think you're saving is actually saving you. Maggie caught him staring and smiled, that same hesitant smile from the train depot that had somehow become confident and radiant. "What are you thinking about?" "That I'm the luckiest man alive," he said honestly, "and that I'm glad I finally stopped holding it in." She crossed the room and kissed him. their daughters asleep in the cradle nearby, the ranch thriving outside, and their future stretching before them like the endless Montana sky. "So am I," she whispered against his lips. "So am I." If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful love story like this one. We want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And here's a question that's been on our minds. If you were Maggie, would you have hesitated when Garrett confessed his love, or would you have trusted your heart immediately? And why? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one, and your answer might just inspire our next story. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop holding it in and tell someone you love them. You never know how it might change everything.